with this series. I'm not sure if I told you, but Geshe-la's idea was actually to continue with the Heart Sutra and Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra until the winter holiday, the Christmas break, and then start Kamalashila's middling stages of meditation after we get back. So in January. So next Saturday, the Saturday after that will be the Vajrayogini teachings for those of you who are following those. And then on the second Saturday in December, I believe, am I correct in this, Dave? There'll be a white Tara empowerment at the Burlington Public Library. And so that will dovetail with our retreat, which is usually over the few days before New Year's, ending on New Year's Eve, which will be a white Tara retreat. So I think that's most of the info for our programming. If I missed anything out, Dave, let me know. And in the meantime, please grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee. I'll invite Geshe-la down and we'll get started in about 2 or 3 minutes. Hi there, everybody. Just don't want the sun to get in Geshe-la's eyes. Okay, that's better. Sorry about that. Okay, so it looks like you can see both of us. Can you hear my voice okay? Okay, great. And Geshe-la, can you hear Geshe-la all right? Okay, let us begin in that case. Oh, just... So first of all, Tashi Dele, greetings. Geshe-la hopes that you are all well and that you are all happy.
And so the Dashani mind, but so the non drug
And so in terms of the activities that we're going to be engaged in today, they're really aimed at helping us secure that lasting and stable happiness that all of us are seeking. But we also understand, right, that the causes of that happiness are not mainly things that are external. They're actually the causes that we cultivate internally within ourselves. And so we speak about this in terms of that ultimate happiness that we call the bliss of liberation. But even for our sort of daily, let's call it ordinary happiness, it's really important to cultivate internal causes for that as well. We can see many examples of people who have seemingly perfect external conditions, right? But they're often not happy. And perhaps the reason for that is they don't know how to change their way of thinking, how to train their mind. So the principle here is really whether we speak about temporary happiness or whether we speak about that ultimate lasting happiness that actually, so is there a problem with our screen?
A little bit long.
It's a little bit long. Is there, should we do something about that or is it okay as is?
Yeah, it's elongated. You're kind of long and thin.
Yep.
And the Buddha, everything.
Yep. Next time.
I mean, for me, that's great because it looks like I went on a diet. But yeah, okay. We do have a new laptop, which has many positive things, but it just may be that some settings need to be adjusted. But as long as it's not totally distracting, my suggestion is we leave it for today. And yeah, okay. All right. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, that tendicire, that day with an so not to Moya, but Jazzy Chimbashavala Lavanuji. And Narosopiana, Tangamay and Mutat Tendicate New Isa, Sajaki watching and draw the Tashi and Taki watching Novia was. Jazzy Chimbashavala, Laja Chimbochilla,
yeah,
and Gamay and Sajaki watching and draw la, that tradition in Rover was.
Yeah. Huggerson. Yeah.
What that day, Noji. Say that day, somebody needs to watch me. You say, that noise on Tandotova, and then Nika Deshi Kadina.
So Shantideva actually explains that we are embarking on a journey, right, to this destination, which is that state of lasting and ultimate happiness. And so when we think about that, we should think about how we're going to take that journey. So we want to, perhaps back in the old days, we would take a horse. And Shantideva explains that actually the horse that is going to lead us to this place of ultimate happiness is the horse of love, compassion, and bodhicitta.
What I'm not going to teach you was they showing a Gosewa, say somebody needs to watch with you said so watch Lebaina, or that sends a Kanga passion.
It is said that actually, if we are able to develop and mount this horse of love, compassion, and bodhicitta, then not only are we going to be able to journey to this destination of ultimate happiness, but merely just getting up on that horse is going to reduce so much of our disturbing minds and suffering.
Then the one draw a session, Julian Joes, Sendeli, the watcher Chernoya.
So it explains that actually once we bring this forth, then not only do we begin this journey towards this ultimate happiness, not only do we achieve the happiness of this lifetime, but we go from happy rebirth to happy rebirth all the way to our ultimate goal of full enlightenment. Yeah. So why, foolish ones, then do you not take up this cultivation, right? Why are you so lazy understanding the benefits?
Well, that did. Please.
Yeah, please.
Because you like that. Marwa.
Okay.
What that is, so that is a Sunji Chiga, but Nimbo Tayo, So the
heart, or the essence of the Buddha Dharma, when we take this into account, is really this mind of bodhicitta that is firmly rooted in love and in compassion. So, generally we kind of go between method and wisdom. So you'll see sometimes we're saying that the main thing is the wisdom realizing emptiness. In this context, right, we speak about the essence as being this mind of bodhicitta that is rooted in love and compassion. But ultimately, both of these are very essential.
So
once we develop these, then we activate the potential of our mind. Once the mind's potential is activated, right, then it becomes vast and powerful. Yeah. So sometimes when we begin cultivating compassion, right, at the beginning, it can seem like something difficult. But His Holiness the Dalai Lama explains actually that rather than causing us to feel depressed, compassion, genuine compassion, when it's brought forth, what happens is we become endowed with courage, with bravery.
And this
kind of courage is not a self-centered courage, right? But it is this determined kind of courage, taking into account all sentient beings. So that so this kind of bravery, right, is this determination, thinking that I myself will help to relieve the suffering of all sentient beings. So ultimately, this mind of great compassion, it's not something that causes us difficulty or anguish. It is something that endows us with a really tangible courage. So, if you are somebody, for example, who develops the courage and the ability to really work at solving major problems within the world, then the normal small disappointments in life are not something that's going to disturb such a person, right? So this is the kind of path that is before us that we are embarking on, and understanding these benefits, this is why we cultivate happily. And so as we embark on this path, we want a body and minds that are peaceful. We want a body and minds that are relaxed. And this will also help us to bring the four elements internally into a balance, right? So the body, definitely, right, it is made out of these components of the four elements. And the mind also is very much connected to those four elements. So bringing them into equilibrium is important. And in particular, when we speak about the elements of earth, fire, water, and wind, wind is considered particularly important because we know, right, within many of the presentations, actually, the wind is the mount of the mind. So the wind and the mind travel together like a rider and its horse. And especially when we come to the practice of Vajrayana, of the tantric path, then being able to access and utilize these winds becomes something very, very important. Yeah. And so actually the really profound presentation of the four elements and how to utilize them is available really only in the tantric teachings. So a little bit too much of an introduction, Geshe said, but as a first step, let us take our body and mind into a state of peacefulness. And as I relax, I bring the four elements into equilibrium, into a peaceful state. As I bring these into balance and develop my mental focus, then all of the discursive thoughts, distractions, stress, and regrets, these gently dissolve away, just like a gentle breeze clears away the clouds obscuring the sun. Developing that peaceful mind then also lets contemplate the state of the world and the situation of so many of the people that dwell there. And if we think about their difficulties, we'll see that actually our situation is quite a good one. Understanding this, having that sense of proportion about those problems, think, I'm not going to kind of pick at the things that are wrong, but I'm going to focus on the reasons, the good conditions I have that can lead to my happiness. The root of all happiness is the positive mental qualities that I bring forth. I have all of the inner and outer conditions necessary to do this. Therefore, I will definitely cultivate these positive qualities. The Buddha teaches that one of the roots of happiness is cultivating an attitude of being close to others. Therefore, feeling close to every single sentient being, develop a feeling of loving affection for them. So let me activate the potential, the power of my mind, and having done that, use it to bring forth these qualities of love and of compassion. And in order to be able to do this successfully, with single-pointed focus and a mind of faith, I will make requests to the holy beings. Huh? Oh, sorry.
That's absolutely.
Oops. Geshe was saying I didn't ring the gong, but I don't think you guys can hear it anyway. So let us begin. We'll do the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, and then we'll do the praise to the perfection of wisdom in Tibetan, and then the Heart Sutra itself in English. So let's begin. Tumba chomden de dejin sheba da chomba yandaba zobe sonje reba dan shazu demba dewa sheba shiten chemba chebu dewe kalo gyora lana meba ladam binamgi tumba sonje chomden de pejawa shakya tuba la chazelo chede Gyalzu ji Tumba chomden de deshin sheba cha chomba yandaba zobe sangye reba dang shazu demba dewa sheba jiten chemba chebu dewe kalo jorwa lana meba ladam binamgi tumba sangye chomden de pejawa shakya tuba la chazelo chede gyalzu ji Tumba chomden de deshin sheba cha chomba yandaba zobe sangye Reba dan shazu demba dewa sheba shiten chemba chebu dewe kalo gyurwa lana meba ladam binamgi tumba sangye chomden de pejawa shakya tuba la chazelo chede gyalzu chi. So the praise to the perfection of wisdom. Mazan jimi shira baro che ma je miga namge ngo ni so so rang ri Geshe che ya du sun ge we yum la chao se. I prostrate to the three noble, rare, sublime ones. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on Massive Vulture's mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentrations on the category phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharadvatiputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no eye element and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata gate gate parasamgate bodhi swaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan rose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. So we'll do the dispelling of hindrance, the prayer to the lion-faced dakini. Kala jubi nijo damba ne ngenji zuju ngawe tuto je juba pola maye pujinji nisa kandro zula chazero akat samara sajda samara daya dara samara. Samaranza Shadara Samaraya Pe Dayata Gate Parasamgate Bodhi Soha Papa Konshu Sungi Dembe Toji Shur Dopa Joji Mepa Joji Shiva Joji Drage Baji Mitumbe Chungyamba Tamshe Shanti Kuruye Soha Geri Tondra Gyaju Shiva Da Mitu Nupe Kendan Jewa Da Tumba Drushin Bunsun Sochobe Chashi Degyan Dende Dele Shu. Do the mandala offering and then the refuge. Meto Chang Risha Blingshi Nide Gyambade Sangye Jinto Mide Bowagi Droto Nanda Jinla Choba Sho Idam Guru Rata Mandala Niryataya. Refuge in Bodhicitta. Chudan Sogi Chunam La Jangchu Bardu Dani Gyazu Chi Dagi Chenyen Gibe Sonam Ki Jola Penche Songye Droba Sho Chudan Sogi Chunam La Jangchu Bardu Dani Gyazu Chi Dagi Chenyen Gibe Sonam Ki Jola Penche Songye Droba Sho Chudan Sogi Chunam La Jangchu Bardu Dani Gyasa Chi Dagi Chenyen Gibe Sonam Ki Jola Penche Songye Droba Sho. Tesuku Age Nga Chiksugita. Lo so. So the activities at the beginning, the activities at the end, and a session that is complete in the beginning, middle, and end. We've mentioned many times this is very important. And so at the beginning, we speak of the practice which allows us to identify a correct path and abandon mistaken paths, which is the practice of refuge. And the second practice, which allows us to abandon a limited path in favor of a vast path, which is the practice of bodhicitta.
Wata nuwa maiki ina yu ta shomba chenpo ta niji chenpo na wata kazi tata se ja chenpo poke kalon katowa ina sosol tel papi tenwo kesora.
So yeah, so I did try to adjust something that's not giving us the elongated view. If this is annoying to you, what I've done on our screen is I've just made the box a little bit smaller, made the tile a little bit smaller. And if you kind of make it a little bit smaller in your screen, what you'll find is our heads will kind of squish together and look bigger. So if that's annoying to you, I would suggest that as a way of kind of mitigating that. But we will work on the setup and try to figure out why the new computer is doing this. Sorry. So if you're not a Buddhist, right, perhaps then this might not feel so relevant, but actually the principle can still be in place, that you try to bring forth the motivation, not just considering yourself, but considering others. And in this way, just establish a vast frame of mind as we embark on the session. So when we speak about this real happiness that we are trying to develop, we understand that it is a result, and a result must come from causes. In terms of the causes that we need to accumulate for this happiness, some are seen, relatively easy to relate to, but others are more subtle or unseen causes. So we will now take a moment to bring forth this positive motivation. So first, rest your mind on the rising and falling, the inhalation and exhalation of the breath. Don't pay attention to other feelings or thoughts that may arise, but simply think, breathing in, I'm aware I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware I'm breathing out. And as we notice these patterns of inhalation and exhalation, we see that the breath is anicca, impermanent. It's something that changes from moment to moment. But it's from making these things sort of more static and permanent that they are, whether it's the breath, whether that it's a feeling, whether it is our sense of self, that grasping at the permanence feeds this attitude of the ignorance grasping at the self, which is ultimately what keeps both myself and others circling within samsara, within cyclic existence.
koe nyo da cheju kandi chi na yo danza mari ba la to ne so da wo shine yo wa ta si wo re du so ba chi.
This ignorance grasping at permanence, this ignorance grasping at the self, is ultimately what keeps beings rooted and continuing to circle within samsara.
Maros lojo to nyole la tene kale mutaba to tene tumbani to vitine do yo zu ta koi kane yo zu le chwa shi so ba chi.
Through our study and practice, which will help us realize the truth of impermanence, through the cultivation, which will help us bring forth the wisdom, realizing emptiness, may we be able to reach a state where we can free all beings from suffering and difficulty.
Soma nuji jabala suji mato bala tama de za de da ge che suji ko to ba sha bi so.
Ultimately, though, I will not be able to help those beings fully until I achieve the state of complete enlightenment. Therefore, for the sake of all beings, may I achieve Buddhahood, bring forth bodhicitta.
Chonju se de ya ta tje ma chong wa me ba cha chong wa so de yo den de do to re so ba chi.
Bringing forth this bodhicitta is not something beyond my reach, because not only do I have the necessary conditions, I have all of the conditions in a very complete way.
Mo ta chonju se ba so yin na ta ji ba de chong so le pe na pe ko lo de chu tin ta shi no la yo re. Ane tumbani mo shi pe mo ko la ko de ne tumbani shi ba shi ne la ko ayun de le chwa shi so ba chong so de ne mo yo re.
So this bodhicitta is framed in different ways in different practices that we do. So if we look at the sadhana of glorious Sri Heruka Chakrasamvara, for example, we will see that there is a contemplation that it is the unknowingness of emptiness. It is the lack of understanding of emptiness that keeps beings locked in this cycle of samsara. Therefore, may I realize this so that I can meaningfully free all sentient beings.
다 이나 요 때는 생제 요조 그치 데 손지 공부 더 해서 대니 이니 민지 추고 손지 세gnal은 도와라 추고 해스 생제 요조 그치 더 어느 손지 공부 더 해서 돼 된다데 이니 민지 추고 해스.
When we speak of bodhicitta, ultimately, though, it must be underpinned by these two aspirations, right? This aspiration to bring real benefit for beings, and for the purpose of doing that, to achieve Buddhahood. So the aspiration of welfare of beings and the aspiration for Buddhahood.
레마도 또니 마도 바도 셰기 아자사 소노야 포치토와 이나요 대고니 자 친구들에 대해서 전주 세다다는 거요.
So if we think, for example, I want to realize emptiness so that I can benefit beings, that's a very elevated thought, but it's not a complete thought of bodhicitta, because you have to have it underpinned by those two aspirations. So in the Majjhimākavatthāra, right, there is a debate about what constitutes a complete thought of bodhicitta, a complete mind of bodhicitta. So we are now in chapter 2 of the Bodhisattvacaryāvatāra. So if you're looking at the bachelor translation as I am, I believe we are on page 5. So we're in chapter 2, the confession of negativities. So it says the confession of negativities, but Geshe was explaining that actually within this practice are also many of the other branch practices or limbs. So it discusses a lot of things beyond the practice of confession. And then one of the practices that we talk about a little bit in sutra, but more in tantra, is the practice of guru yoga. So when we speak of human beings, we speak of them as possessing this type of life force. And if there is no life force present, then that person will not be able to kind of live and go about their activities. So when we speak of tantric practice, we say that guru yoga is the very lifeblood. It is the life force of the path. So without the practice of guru yoga, then the other things are not possible. So when we speak about the practice of guru yoga from the tantric perspective, we do this on the basis of cultivating an awareness that the Lama, that the Guru, and the Yidam, the meditational deity, are inseparable. Seeing the Guru and the deity as inseparable, we then engage in the 7 practices, which in Tantra are called the 7 purities, rather than the 7 limbs. So when we speak about a practice of guru yoga, that's really what we mean, actually. So in sutra, you don't necessarily hear the term guru yoga. You hear the term, and in Tibetan, it is Shenyen Tensul. Shenyen means virtuous friend or Kalyana Mitra. Tensul is the way to rely. So the way to rely on the virtuous friend. Geshe was explaining that although the phrasing is different, the essence is very similar because we rely upon the teacher with respect and we engage in the practice of the 7 limbs. And so because the 7 purities and the 7 branches are so important, right? They're mentioned in the earlier part of many texts, including this one. And one of the benefits of the 7-limbed or 7-branch practice is that in terms of the causes that it allows us to cultivate, we're cultivating a lot of the causes for our everyday ordinary happiness within samsara as well. So it takes care of both temporary and ultimate needs. So when we have that knowledge, right, that these 7 limbs will help us secure that temporary happiness, we don't want to have that as our main motivation for doing the practice, but we can have that awareness as one of its benefits. And think about our situation within samsara. What is it that causes our happiness or suffering? It's really the 3 poisons as well as our negative karma. And within the practice of the 7 limbs, we have means to purify that or clear that away.
다 제와 대지가 조조된 노게 니모 조이네 다 세나티가 보게 니모 조지레서.
So when we speak about the practice of making offerings, which is one of the 7, this is a remedy to the attitude of miserliness or stinginess within our mind.
손주도 쇼시서 봐서 게게 모셔야지고 야레서. 마 할레 마세나 잡아가지피. Mas sosoge te jimbato ya pasi jendag jimbato na kwaki machi yares.
Ale. Mi jendag jimbana di machi asta machi lagite. So there's a story that relates to this about a man who was particularly miserly to the point that not only was he very ungenerous, but when he saw others performing acts of generosity, he would try to interfere.
다 teletanes lama kashiga. And
so to help him sort of get rid of this miserly attitude, one of his teachers instructed him to have a precious object in one hand and pass it to the other hand. And in this way, start to go against that kind of momentum of miserliness. And our mind is a very strange thing sometimes. Simple exercises can help to loosen those knots. So from passing it from one hand to the other, eventually the miserliness was relaxed to the point that near the end of his life, he became very well known for his practice of generosity. And also, when we look at how this practice is presented, for example, here, it speaks about the offerings that are emanated or made by mind. And if we can make offerings without even having to have the material facilities to do so, right? Think about how amazing and all-encompassing that practice is. And so we have the practices in sutra here, making these various offerings of perfumes, waters, and so forth. And in tantra, right, we know we have together with the mudras, argam, pajam, pupe, dupe, aloke, nuide, and shabda. And these are also represented by the 7 or 8 offering bowls that we often see in Buddhist homes. So those are the main offerings, and then the text also sort of ornaments these with additional offerings. Yeah. So we left off at the part where we generate the bathing pavilion. Right? We generate the bathing pavilion for the holy beings. And if you watch sometimes the monks, when they're performing a bathing offering, you'll see that they have a mirror and they have, sometimes it's that peacock feather from the bumpa, and they draw something on a mirror. They draw actually kind of a square, and that square represents the bathing pavilion. So you draw that as kind of the ritual support. But of course, when you visualize it in your mind, it's a beautiful 4-sided bathing pavilion made out of the most precious substances, ornamented with jewels and so forth. And so then, having generated this bathing pavilion, we offer the holy beings a bath, then we dry their holy bodies, and then finally we make offerings of clothing and then of ornaments. So yeah, so we are on page 5 and we are on verse 13. I adorn with manifold ornaments and various raiments, fine and smooth, the Aryas, Samantabhadra, Manjughosha, Avalokiteshvara, and others.
어다 럼보치 제 자초 몽보고 소자시 그게 라이 링아트니 두아스 라이 링아도 다더니 라이 제 몽보 요아라스 어다 대지요 please.
So we offer all kinds of ornaments and many of these are imbued with deep symbolic meaning. So the crown ornament that we offer to the Buddhas, it has 5 kind of sections to it. And those 5 sections represent each of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, or each of the lords of the 5 Buddha families.
어다 된다 지엔다 마다요 피사가 쪼텔다 미서 마도다 문두아스 아니 파파 근도서 모도 좀비요 아니 지테 무시 세시레지.
Yeah. So then we offer this to all of the holy beings, but in verse number 13, 3 are mentioned specifically: Samantabhadra, Manjughosha, and Avalokiteshvara. So Avalokiteshvara, actually in the Tibetan here, just in case you're interested, it's not given as Chenrezi, it's given as Jigten Wangchuk, Lord of the World. But the Lord of the World is an aspect of Avalokiteshvara.
그래서 어다 디에서 그 챔비가 샤세니 시제 조레 수지세마 제요 사이님부터 데르지레.
And so these 3 are the representatives of the 8 chief bodhisattvas, and you'll see many lists of the 8 chief bodhisattvas that include other bodhisattvas such as Shittigarbha and so forth. So you add to these ones. Geshe said, definitely we add Shittigarbha, definitely we add Maitreya, definitely we add Namkhe Nimbo ane Chana Dorje. Definitely we add Vajrapani and Mahasamprapta, I believe. But anyways, you can easily find this list. It's a list of 8 bodhisattvas. So when we think about these 3 or these 8 bodhisattvas, so when we think about these 8 bodhisattvas, we so when we think about these 8 bodhisattvas, we understand that actually they're already enlightened. They are already fully enlightened Buddhas. But for the sake of helping sentient beings, they take on a bodhisattva aspect. They are known as divine aspect bodhisattvas. So they serve many purposes. For example, helping to stabilize the doctrine of the Buddha, helping the Blessed One benefit sentient beings, right? So in order to accomplish this, although they are enlightened, they take on the aspect of a bodhisattva. So, however, there is a dispute about the status of one of these divine aspect bodhisattvas in particular. So at Geshe-la's monastery of Sera, he believes that both colleges would say that Maitreya is already enlightened. Geshe-la believes that at Drepung Loseling, they say that he's actually not yet reached Buddhahood. He is a high-level bodhisattva. Ko tushita la jangshum sempa gudegiyores. Ya sakarires lagirevekus. Sorry, Geshe-la was a bit cheesed because I said, like, what bhumi is the bodhisattva on? He's like, I don't know. But yeah. So I think that's, he thinks it's the 10th. Yeah, he thinks it's the 10th. So then we've offered those beautiful ornaments. Shupa. And now we're offering fragrances and so forth, fragrances and ointments. Verse number 14. So just like polishing pure refined gold, do I anoint the Buddha's forms that blaze with light, with the choicest perfumes whose fragrance permeates 1,000 million worlds.
하고서와 또 선제 또 첨벌을 받쳐야 돼. 그다 저마한테 비다보. 정에 동아 이스라엘 저마야 농아 쉬쳐워. 가시 저마 걸 내가 맞잖아.
Ale.
저마 요나요.
Yeah.
걸래레지는 요나.
Ale.
정에 동아 세리가 쉬쳐워 요 받으세요.
Ale. Okay.
도송.
Yeah. So the fragrance permeates. What Geshe means is that sometimes you have something that has a scent, but it's kind of flat when you apply it to the body, right? This is a powerful scent that is able to reach the faculties of all beings. And we imagine that we offer this fragrant ointment on the body of a Buddha, just like we would gently gild the Buddha with gold leaf, right? So that's how we offer the fragrant ointment. And so now in verse number 15, and to the highest objects of giving I offer beautiful, well-arranged garlands, as well as enchanting, sweet-smelling flowers, such as lily, jasmine, and lotus blooms. Pajam, pupe, dupe. Aloke is low. Marme. Yeah.
Shuba.
Di hamko.
Yeah.
Genderebe.
Yeah.
So pupe within those mantras is the one to offer the flowers.
This one?
Yes.
This one.
Yeah, this one.
Oh yeah. Oh, that this one. Ton no chi chula yi goni meto mandara se laile yo ki medo te segares.
Meta mandara? Layu sana?
Laile yo ki.
Ale, loso. So this particular kind of thing, which is translated here as lily, Geshe is actually explaining that as a flower that actually grows in the celestial realms. And so the lotus blooms, right? These lotuses are flowers that we see in our world. So those are also offered. So jasmine and lotus certainly are available in our world. We see them. This particular kind of lily that is mentioned here, it seems like it's a flower that grows in one of the celestial realms rather than on our world. So we imagine that all of these flowers are arranged in beautiful garlands, flowers of many different types and colors, and we offer those up. So if you ever go to India, right, and you see how they make the flower offerings for the religious rituals, it's done in many beautiful ways, like scattering, but also like taking a piece of string and taking it through many flowers to make a beautiful garland, right? They have many ways of making these offerings. So if you want to have like a lot of nice like jewelry and clothing and things in your next life, then that doesn't happen without a cause. So from the worldly point of view, right, this helps amass causes for things like that. Yeah. So those are the causes of having those things in the future. And as we said, due to Tibet's geography, instead of flowers, they would often offer a kata, right, a silk scarf. So now we come to verse number 16, which is dupe, which is offering the incense. Vale. So the first half of 16 is about the incense. I also send forth clouds of incense whose sweet aroma steals away the mind. Yeah. So yitro means something that arises gladness in being, something a little bit like that. So the smell of this incense is universally appealing, right? It's something that arises that gladness or pleasure in the minds of beings. So one of the Vedic gods, so one of the okay, so Geshe thinks it's Ishvara. So one of the Vedic gods, Ishvara, he is known as the reservoir of pleasure. He's known as the reservoir of pleasure because just looking at his form, it brings kind of forth joy and because any person who gazes upon him like feels happy, feels joyful. So this sweet aroma that steals away the mind, it kind of leads the mind and brings forth a feeling of pleasure. And it's a powerful aroma, right, that carries in many directions. And we imagine, not just offering one stick of incense, but a very generous offering of incense that forms a smoke, which are like big rain clouds in the sky. And so that's why you'll see in Tibetan rituals, when you have like an important lama, for example, coming, they'll have a big bundle of incense sticks kind of tied together, and they lead the lama with that big bundle of incense sticks. And so now we do the Geshe. So now we have the offering of the food. As well as celestial delicacies, including a variety of foods and drinks. So every kind of food and drink that is necessary and that could be imagined, right? There's a quality of limitlessness. When we say celestial delicacies, celestial means that, the foodstuffs that we are offering are so kind of high quality that they're suitable to be offered to the gods. Yeah, so that's important to keep in mind, right? When we talk about celestial delicacies, the gods, right? The celestial beings, they like things that are very clean and beautiful, right? So the cleanliness of the offerings is very important. And so we should understand also, right, that the food that we have in things like this, they are from the practice of generosity, one of which is making offerings. And when we look in the world at so many places where there is not enough food, there is not enough drink, and so forth, right? That is a karmic situation that can be remedied with generosity. Yeah, that mare pupe dupe kare argam pupe allocate. Yeah. So now allocate the offering of the lamps. I offer them jeweled lamps arranged on golden lotus buds. Agi.
세그서 자지 메도 뼈마
Sengi pema lagyo ser
세시
so semgi pema ser
세시 와서 세지 메도 세그서 자지 도와스 세가면 세그서 자지 메도 뼈마 터내서 이게 돌아 다니죠 지나
Yeah. So this is a very beautiful kind of offering lamp. You may have seen these before, which is it's made out of gold or gold leaf, and it has the shape of a lotus. And then within that kind of golden lotus case, you have the lamp offering.
어단데 오너 진이 뭐치 하고 그러와서 데메데지 빠그리 들이게 디강가시 우소인 거도와스 마리베 맘바세 데네스가 레스
And we talk about light offerings in many ways. We know that light, right, represents illuminating, so getting rid of the fog of ignorance. So this is one of the powerful aspects of light offerings.
딘티바체 다 kumba 피와데 kumba 자메콩
Ale, los.
사제다와 비치 슈바 데르 메토이고 스만롬바 자메 포종 떼용 이공데 마티 리치 제쇼 젠바와 바이 노키 젠제 데다죠 투지 론지 제라 보와죠.
So Geshe is reading the second half of 17 and verse 18 together, so I'll do the same thing. Upon land sprinkled with scented water do I scatter delicate flower petals. To those who have the nature of compassion, I offer palaces resounding with melodious hymns, exquisitely illuminated by hanging pearls and gems that adorn the infinities of space.
자메 포종 세기도와 사이 야이코노 자메 세리 예치는 자마토바타 보시기라스.
Ale, loso. Palaces resounding with melodious hymns. Gonda jaye kangsena?
미자메 세리 세자 마토바 간조.
Ale.
세 느리지레 사다 고생하고 보시기나.
Sorry, inji nangla yomare tets cheshi jata nga yapo komaso.
세시스 자메 세리
Jame.
세자 마토바.
Se jame to basana?
세 느리지 요아레 고생하고 진짜 세 라마토바지. 요아탄.
Ale, ya trane soso lab tugi omare. Ale, okay. Yes, okay. So I think, I don't know if Bachelor would be very happy with me for saying this, but I think this is a mistranslation here because we talk about offering palaces resounding with melodious hymns. So Geshe-la's commentary is saying is not giving that as the meaning at all. It is talking about beautiful palaces, right, whose beauty is beyond expression. So it's not a resounding hymn that is being sung. It's just that there is nothing that could do justice verbally to the palace's magnificence. So that's more of the meaning here.
This one, or that the medo do biggest chupado da hale pasosubakanga ayobachi.
And so, of course, within this beautiful structure, we have the flowers, beautiful incense, and strings, garlands of pearls and gems, and so forth. And it is something that touches the furthest reaches of space, so is unbelievably vast. We offer this to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. Yeah. So next is offering the parasol, verse 19. Eternally I shall offer to all the Buddhas jeweled umbrellas with golden handles and exquisite ornaments embellishing the rims, standing erect, their shapes beautiful to behold. Yeah. So I would say parasol rather than umbrella because these actually more offer shade from the sun. And Geshe is saying that it is made out of the very best quality of fabrics and bejeweled with beautiful gems, pearls, and so forth. And so offering the parasol is actually said to become the causes for receiving the marks and signs of an enlightened being in the future. It creates the causes to receive the marks and signs. So next is music. And in addition, may a mass of offerings resounding with sweet and pleasing music, like clouds that appease the misery of all, each remain for as long as is necessary.
다 ngamayi 다 tisula 맞아 유아로스. 어느 사고 첨보도 들리나.
사오 첨보스.
사코.
아네.
야, 칼라 사비 칼레들 제도 그도 드니 가사 칼라 유아로스. 하고서 텔라테네 코라 칼라 심보도
Right. So Geshe said that it's just like in the old days when you would invite a guest, right? Not only would you provide all of a nice place to sit and food and so forth, in order for him or her to enjoy their meal, you would also want to provide entertainment, right? And so this is the context where that beautiful music is offered.
다 대돈다와 다 나로서 제와 비위가 라요탄에 라마자 침버지 변화 자와 터지 제와 세라베바이나 세라리아 또 뭐페 저거 돌아 주이네라 ndi도 대주아 쫙베가라 토가니 잘도 요래
So you'll see that, for example, when His Holiness comes to one of the larger monasteries in the south, a whole way of greeting him kind of makes all of these offerings, right? To the So you'll see somebody guiding him with a parasol. There'll be somebody with the incense. There's going to be rice and flower petals that are scattered along the path where he is walking. And when he is being sort of led to the temple in this way, on the roof of the dukang, of the assembly hall at the monastery, there will be people with the jaling and so forth, like the kind of clarinet type instruments. And this is an offering of music. And so this beautiful way of greeting is really the perfect way of accumulating the limb, the branch practice of offering.
This one. This way. That day chevan to do us, or that nuji seriar is the then make a jar. Pena nebali momochi hakosara was, nebali chete pita what jabicala, chance in a chimasena, which oh, the chete chiwaja, was chimbos, kitabo. Sono tu amares. Tell Tenny killed just summer was. Tama Yapo Zozan conjevashonella, Kid Dungo till Trevitavares.
I do which Tavares, and then Kewajima de la. So there's a story related to the great Bodha Stupa in Kathmandu in Nepal. So many of you may have visited there. And probably some of you are familiar with the story that when that stupa was being constructed, right, there was a man who looked at it and thought, like, what a waste of money, right? What a waste of resources, and kind of looked down on it. But later, as the stupa came to completion, he was really inspired and he regretted the previous things that he had said. So he decided to offer a beautiful bell to the stupa as a way of kind of purifying that negative speech.
Yeah.
So the result of that was that in his next lifetime, he had a form. So Geshe is learning to be politically correct in how he says these things. So how do I translate it into English? He had a form which was less than pleasing to the people who saw it. So his form was not something that was really pleasant for people to gaze upon. However, he had a very beautiful, melodious voice in that subsequent rebirth. Right. So when people heard his voice, right, it was so beautiful that they would stop talking, that they wouldn't want to, drown it out, that people would stop what they were doing so that they could hear it. And so these offerings of music, right, this can create the cause to have a pleasant or pleasing voice. And so as we come to verse number 21, it's inexhaustibility. So we imagine these offerings as a continuous, inexhaustible kind of stream or continuum.
도치 켄조 도치 도체데노 도 그즈라 제메도 라수 차 점마차바 차반 호지를 다파 안에 마마바쇼
So it's falling like a heavy rain. So verse number 21, and may a continuous rain of flowers and precious gems descend upon the reliquaries and the statues and upon all the jewels of the Dharma.
오다디 제텔라나 예비체바 사도 차바레스
And so these are known as the excelled offerings. And so as we said, there are two kind of categories by this measure, the excelled offerings and the unexcelled offerings.
달라나 메비체바
And so the unexcelled offerings are now following from verse 22 onwards.
제단 조용 라수비 자와노라 첸제바 대저 도기 대지시 게보세도 첸 게보세도 제노체
In the same way as Manju Gosha and others have made offerings to the conquerors, similarly do I bestow the gifts upon the Tathagatas, the protectors, their sons, and all.
당가로서 레 동베이까레는 라나 메비체바 콜리라고 야마 지튼바지마도 미네데 요토고 마레세기야.
So these two types of offerings, excelled and unexcelled offerings, the unexcelled offerings are said to be not really so easy for us to perform as beginners.
다 알레지라. 되네. 다 손주세마 파파 뚜마니 에스도 도소나. 라나 메비체바 피다쇼데 무야레세기야.
So we can make an offering that is a similitude to the unexcelled offerings. When is one really able to make an unexcelled offering in the full sense? After the Bodhisattva has achieved the path of seeing. In other words, afterwards he or she has become an Arya being.
당에서도 마도나요 뚜바이나요 제와 비게 제위지 제와 비사 여강가 로즈메바 뚜비관이요 제와 비와이나 우체 도레스.
And so the unexcelled offering really comes from an understanding of the lack of inherent existence, the lack of true existence of the person making the offering, the substances of the offering itself, and the object of worship to whom the offering is made. So it's known as the three-sphere emptiness.
Yeah. So
we might not be able to comprehend really, right, the lack of true or inherent existence of the offerer, the offering, and the one to whom the offering is made. But even before we have that direct realization of emptiness, contemplating the emptiness of these three spheres of the offering is like a similitude of the unsurpassable offering.
So
how does this work in verse number 22? We, as we said, we don't necessarily have that realization that an Arya being has of emptiness. So how do we get around this? We say, just like these great bodhisattvas like Manju Gosha and others of the 8 bodhisattvas made offerings, I make offerings in the same way, right? So we kind of take their realization of emptiness into our making of the offerings.
Oh yeah.
Konso tongni topa dela teninganso pento yongires. Duschene labna? So we get a benefit of that because they have that realization of emptiness and are able to make those unsurpassable offerings. So when we think in this way, we're able to get some of the benefit of that. So just to close here, when we are making offerings and so forth, we want this practice of the offerings to be as separated from the 8 worldly dharmas, the 8 worldly concerns as possible. And we also want to try to think about the emptiness of ourself as the offerer, of the substance of the offering, and the lack of inherent existence of the object of worship to which we are making the offering. Right. When we think in this way, another really valuable benefit, when we think in this way, the ignorance grasping at the self is the root of all the other afflictions. So when we contemplate the emptiness of the offering and so forth, this protects the merit that we accumulate of that practice of offering from being degenerated by anger and so forth. Yes. So now we will turn our conversation to the Heart Sutra. So as we come to these teachings and as we listen, we want to have something that we're fabricating, some structure of understanding that we be able to explain something of what we're learning to somebody else. So then, as we spoke about the Heart Sutra, we began with a discussion of the three kinds of transmitted speech. And Geshe would like to remind you of those. The orally transmitted speech, that's number one, and then so then there is the given by mandate or future pronouncement. That's the second type of transmitted speech. And then transmitted by blessing. So dene gorim kandisre tambodi Jesu dene jene okay. So Geshe is saying that he prefers the order where you have the Jesu nangwa, so the given by mandate speech, then you have the nipa jinjilaparwa, then you have the transmitted by blessing speech, and finally third you have the orally transmitted speech. Lengji. Yeah. And so we have the preamble of the sutra, and we said that there was a common preamble and an uncommon preamble. These are considered to be the type of transmitted speech which is given by mandate or given by future pronouncement. So it's a future pronouncement of the Buddha saying there's going to be a time, right, where I don't begin something, but you amongst yourselves have to begin this discussion. So this discussion will be begun at this time in this place. Yeah, so that is given by a mandate, right? The Buddha mandates that this is going to be spoken. So the preamble within the Heart Sutra is given by mandate. Then we have a discussion between Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara. The discussion between Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara is the transmitted by blessing. So it's the transmitted by blessing kind of speech. And in terms of the transmitted by blessing speech, which is this conversation between Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara, we haven't even finished everything that's there, right? That's about where we are in our discussion of the Heart Sutra. And when we speak about the kind of transmitted speech which is transmitted by blessing, the Sutra of the 10 Bhumis gives three kinds, so three subcategories of transmitted by blessing. So transmitted by blessing by body, transmitted by blessing by holy speech, transmitted by blessing of holy mind. So, for example, the Sutra of the 10 Bhumis is mentioned as being an example of something transmitted by the blessing of holy body. So how this happened was so how this happened was the Buddha took his hand and placed it upon the head of the Bodhisattva Manjushri. And that was the beginning of the propounding of the sutra. So that's why it's called transmitted by blessing of body. Yeah. So Geshe said the hand is part of the body, right? Touching him on the head in this way started the sutra rolling. So this is an example of transmitted by blessing, specifically transmitted by blessing of holy body. So the Sutra of the 10 Bhumis, Geshe said, it's actually a chapter within a larger sutra, but we still call it the Sutra of the 10 Bhumis. And the Sutra of the 10 Bhumis is said to be the kind of root source of Umalajuparwa, the Madhyamakavatara, the entering the middle way. And then the next one, transmitted by blessing of speech, there is the sutra that has to do with King Mahindra. I believe, I can't remember the Sanskrit exactly, it's Ajarasattu or something like this. If I'm mistaken, someone please let me know. But anyways, the sutra about King Mahindra, right, who killed his father and developed regret and so forth, this is transmitted by blessing of holy speech. So transmitted by holy speech, what happened, of course, the Buddha being clairvoyant, he understood what had happened to King Mahindra. He understood that Mahindra had a very sincere but almost unbearable regret. So he spoke to one of his students and dispatched them and said, proclaim this to Mahindra to clear away the grief of regret in his mind. So there's other examples of that which we can come to in the future. And then there is the transmitted by blessing by holy mind. Tuk yeshegi. Sorry, Tingezin yeshe. Then sumpati. Dembe to pikinasa. Oh, right. Dempa, right. Okay, so within transmitted by blessing, we have the third, transmitted by blessing of holy mind. Transmitted by blessing of holy mind has a further 3 subcategories. Transmitted by holy mind through concentration, transmitted by holy mind through exalted wisdom, and transmitted by holy mind through words of truth. And so the Heart Sutra is said to be a sutra transmitted by blessing, the main part of it, right? Transmitted by the blessing of the holy mind, and specifically transmitted by blessing of the holy mind through the power of samadhi or concentration. So now we will turn to the text of the Heart Sutra itself. Soglam, Jolam. So we talked about the paths of accumulation and preparation, and how emptiness could be cultivated from 4 points of view. So the next one is how on the path of seeing. On the path of seeing, there are 8 profundities of emptiness that have to be contemplated. So 8 on the path of seeing. So here, so I'll read. So we are on page 11 in the prayers for the beginning of the teachings. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled.
This one? Oh, that he got say yourself. That's Shari, but that ina said you say was Namatuma Yishes was the name by his son. Ah, Tulu and Nicola.
Yeah.
Tumbani, jet, not a gossip to Janitani.
So what is being said here is that, okay, so likewise, so as with what was said before, now, so here we have to understand that we're talking on the path of seeing. We can talk about the 8 profundities of emptiness and also profundities of emptiness as related to the 3 doors of liberation. So signlessness, wishlessness, and so forth. So you'll notice when we talk in Tantra, we speak about 4 doors of liberation. So in the commentaries of the sadhanas, Geshe has spoken about 4 doors of liberation, but in the context of sutra, we speak about 3 doors of liberation. Yeah. Yeah. Senimepa. So the 3 doors of liberation. So Geshe said to understand the 8, you want to start with these 3. So we can talk about the door to liberation of emptiness, the door to liberation of signlessness, and the door to liberation of wishlessness. So there's different ways to translate these, but I think emptiness is the good one. Emptiness, signlessness, and wishlessness. Ngo tombani. Yeah. Gyu demba drupa. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Samba driver.
Okay. So we can understand these 3 doors in sort of 3 parts. We can think about the nature, the cause, and the result. When we think about the nature or the essence, it is emptiness. When we think about the cause, it is that Dembadrupa Mepa. It is the signlessness of true existence. In other words, like true existence isn't really a thing. So signlessness of true existence. And the result of that is wishlessness. So emptiness as the nature or essence, signlessness as the cause, and wishlessness as the result. Yeah. So within the text, all phenomena, Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness. This phrase, all phenomena are emptiness, this goes with that first. Its nature or essence as being emptiness. Yep. Yep. Oh, okay. Okay. So then the next one we talked about as being the cause, signlessness. This has 5 parts to it. So reading from the text, without characteristic is 1, unproduced 2, unceased 3, stainless 4, not without stain 5. Jimadan Jawa Mepa Tamarwa. Yeah.
This one. Oh, that got to say you are a sana. I also quite Jokoro. Yeah.
Yeah.
Demba to be Shiva Yamari. Guapa Yamari. Don't it? Demba to be Tomato Tower Yamari.
Okay.
Demba to be Tomato.
So I'm just asking for it to come slowly because I find these things difficult. For Geshe, it's like second nature, but I need to get it slowly. Otherwise, I'll make a mistake. Yes. So because the causes of samsara are signless, in other words, that they lack true existence, therefore,
다 데마 코라 세마 데마트베 세마 마도나 디이더니 디워시 데마트바 쇼요 말에 마셰바 근데 데마트바 마셰는 거예요 말에
right? So because that cause, signlessness, it lacks true existence, then it is not truly produced and so forth. So it gotons, pet gotons.
Yeah.
Chuksum. Hali pechembo chuksum.
Pena sabe epoch sabe ko.
Mare dima jo adit sigden so joa.
Si tese was epoch sabe ko jero was ko dematbe chama me aiza. Ki inju epote dematba shio yo mare.
Yeah, so just like the seed of an apple lacks true existence, in the same way its fruit is also not truly existent. Yeah. So therefore it is unproduced. A truly existent thing is unproduced, unceased, and so forth. There is no truly existent stain, therefore it is stainless. There is no truly existent thing without stain, so it is also not without stain. So that is what is meant with these words. So it's also important to parse the words here, because if Geshe said it's sometimes better to think about it as with the self of persons or with our own body, right? If we talk about this body, it's not that it is without stain, right? We know that it is stained because its causes are afflicted, but those stains are not truly existent. That is meant by, that is what is meant by stainless.
This one, so
Geshe thinks these words are easy, but understanding the profound emptiness explicitly, that's the difficult part.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so now we come to the third of these three doors of liberation, which is wishlessness. So this is the last two parts in that sentence, which is not deficient, not fulfilled. Correct. Ngazu jula sana.
Ngarusu sela. Jula sela. Ngarusu nyemu yar was. Nyemu te manyur no yar was.
Yes. Yeah.
Akasara ina yo ruji tipi nyemu te nyur yar.
So not deficient, not fulfilled. Here we think of the afflictions that are within our mind. If we are able to tackle those afflictions, they can be reduced. However, it is not possible to reduce inherently existent afflictions, right? Because they lack inherent existence. That is what is meant by not deficient. So deficient, I don't necessarily know if deficient is the best word here, but it means that it cannot be reduced. It cannot be decreased. So it's really pointing at the lack of inherent existence, even of the afflictions. So, yeah. So how do people understand the word deficient? Because I'm not understanding it in this way. When I say deficient, do you guys understand that as something that can be decreased? I understand that as something that is lacking.
Yeah, that's a common lacking.
Okay, so let's just change it for this sake. It's something that cannot be decreased. So Geshe said, just like if you say this water cannot be decreased, of course it can. As we drink it, it's less and less. But the inherently existent water cannot be decreased because it lacks inherent existence. That's what it's pointing to. Yeah. So not fulfilled also is not increased. really. So it's taking the other angle of this demonstration. So Geshe is giving the example of when you fill the water until the glass becomes completely full, it's not filled because it's not filled with inherently existent water, right? But certainly nominally that water is there. Yeah, so from the perspective so this is important because the Sautantrikas are insisting that there is some element of existence to that, but the Prasangikas are not. So from the Prasangika point of view, these words are particularly important. So the mind only, the Majjhimika Sautantrikas and so forth, they would say that, there is that decrease of water with that aspect of inherent existence, and also that increase. But the Prasangikas would say that this is not the case. Sorry, I'm having problems keeping up, but those are my limitations. Yeah. So not fulfilled, when we talk about the positive mental qualities, really not increased. It's not that positive qualities cannot be increased, because we know that certainly they can when we cultivate, but that there is no inherently existent quality that can be increased. This is the way that these words have to be understood.
Yeah.
So wishlessness means that those things that we wish for, right? Like the positive mental qualities we want to develop. So the wishlessness means that those things that we wish for, like bodhicitta, those other positive mental qualities, they lack inherent existence. So that's what that wishlessness is really pointing to. Younger Sundang, Tonglam, Kapla? Yeah. Yep. So the Bodhisattva on the path of seeing is mainly practicing profound emptiness related to these 8 points. And so the Bodhisattva on the path of preparation, they are cultivating emptiness mainly through the wisdoms of hearing and contemplation. Sorry, mainly through the trainings of hearing and contemplation. So jolam tengmani lao so. Okay, sorry. So on the path of accumulation, I'm sorry, that was erroneous. So on the path of accumulation, the Bodhisattva is practicing emptiness mainly according to hearing and contemplation. On the path of preparation, the Bodhisattva is mainly practicing according to meditation on both shamatha and vipassana. So on the path of seeing, the Bodhisattva is now practicing having had that direct realization of emptiness. So they are now carrying that over in their contemplation. So that is where we shall leave off today. I'm saying I didn't get a warning about those 8, but I guess it's like, hey, you have to know that. So with a joyful mind, then let us dedicate the merits. Jangjo Semjo Rinpoche Maje Panam Chejurji Chewa Nyamba Meba Yang Gone Gonda Pewa Sho Tongni Tawa Rinpoche Maje Panam Chejurji Chewa Nyamba Meba Yang Gone Gondo Pewa Sho Jambe Pao Jidar Kemba Dang Kundu Zambo Deyan Dejente Deda Kungi Jesu Dalo Jir Gewa Dida Tamje Radamo Dusu Shebe Gyawa Tamje Ge Mowa Gangla Chodo Ngaba De Dagi Gewe Tsawa Digun Kyang Zambo Joji Rabdu Mowa Gangri Rawe Kowe Jingan De Bendan Dewa Male Jongwe Ne Chire Ziwan Tenze Gyatso Ye Shape Site Bardu Tengyo. So we'll pause there. So Geshe said he didn't do a vaster dedication because we just have a few minutes left and he'd like to invite questions. So, so emptiness is the best dedication. Does anybody have a question? Is there anything in chat or on socials, Dave, or anybody? Yomar. So are we sure there's no questions?
Nothing on social. I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Yeah.
That I just really love this practice of imagining to being able to make offerings like Samantha Bhadra.
Yeah.
And also thinking that the offerings made are only due to the kindness of all sentient beings. So offering on their behalf and praying that all sentient beings receive the benefit of the offerings. I find this really wonderful.
Kutu Zampo Nangshin Chobapuya Samlotana Ko Shebogagire do Akarin Senanganso di Nangshin Chobapu to Gyomarine di Nangshin Sone de ne Koronsone Pentogragire do and also you said the kindness of sentient beings.
Yeah, we can make offerings because of dependent arising. Yeah.
Ale. He said he thought that was the best part, so he talked a lot about that. I thought it was nice too. He said I didn't think it was nice. No, I also thought it was nice. I don't know where I got that from. So Geshe said if there's no questions, then
Pavi has a question.
Oh yes, go for it, Pavi. Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yes.
Tashidele, and thank you for the teachings. Probably you might have explained this previously. I have skipped. I would not be able to take part every section you have been teaching, but I've been wondering because the Buddha is giving the teachings, and then there is Avalokiteshvara. And it's not Manjushri. So why Shariputra is asking and discussing with Avalokiteshvara?
Yeah.
And why is Avalokiteshvara kind of like today we discussed and you taught that he is kind of holy, subtle level of Buddha's understanding, who is contemplating with Shariputra. This part, why is there Avalokiteshvara involved this big teaching?
Okay, yeah, no, I'm not.
What is his role? Why he's
Yes,
there?
yes,
Why
yes.
Shri Buddha?
Are you wondering like why it's Avalokiteshvara instead of the Buddha himself saying this?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, yes, okay, I
Thank
got you. Yeah, no problem, no problem. Nganso chenrezi parsu shea mambo duas ra yine shepa denso chatsangwa thompa chomden dere dua. Thompa chomden de kare chene katu sungyo mares. Kare chene chenrezi gi gyune shegires.
Memitaka didil karsakasar tate ani tate chato dembara chato tsochi magopana ta senchega deja kangalolo ko ichido ta tandiga ya chi sechires ji
Kare ichi.
ta magopana de senche momobol pedo jeado jete moya gila sunji koro no maja Sherezi de Otitikal, Makangi Chichesa, Maje Mandaji was.
Ale, the consul sangile ichi mangarede.
Te Rodu Maritin Mida, Shato, Ujanda Giona.
Yeah.
Sunju Koro Laga said Giamar.
Come down Mupa Kola Mamboyan. Okay, all right. So the way that Geshe is explaining this is it's a way to elevate the faith in the disciples, right? So the Buddha confirms, when you come to the end of the sutra, the Buddha confirms what was said, right? Everyone familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay. So why Avalokiteshvara? So Geshe just explains it simply that there are some beings who would have had more affinity, more of a sense of connection with Avalokiteshvara. And for their benefit to be able to develop faith in the teachings, it's good to incorporate Avalokiteshvara in this way. And the appearance of this is that the Buddha is kind of in meditative equipoise when all of this is happening, and on his behalf, Avalokiteshvara is talking.
Pena Tanda Inayo, didn't know. Seribaji Ina, Seribaji, Tonsamaimba. Mumbo, Tonsachiba Lenilla.
Yeah.
Hakosara, Korosu Tatana, which is also not.
Yeah.
The Nitsi no Juno was Ochichan with was.
Michik
Maimba.
Right. So Geshe said, if you think about it as like scientific research, right? When scientists do a research panel, the findings carry more weight when multiple scientists sign off on the findings and when multiple scientists sign off on the research. So in this way, perhaps we could say the sutra carries more weight because several holy beings were involved. So that could be another possible reason. Yeah. And also that talking about the way things really are, things' ultimate nature, right? It's not just one person, no matter how enlightened that person may be, the Buddha. It's not just one person that is propounding this truth, right? But there are other noble beings that are also propounding this truth. So in this way, it could also be a skillful means to arise faith in emptiness. Ale. Can this?
Yeah, too many in this tattoo.
Yeah.
They send you Nicola and Toyo.
Another reason may have to do with the fact that we said that Avalokiteshvara was enlightened, but in this sutra, he's appearing in a bodhisattva aspect. Remember, we talked about a divine aspect, bodhisattva. So the reason for this is, so beings think, okay, it's not just a Buddha who can contemplate and discuss emptiness, right? But also a being who's closer, if we take bodhisattva at face value, still pretty high, but not as far away from us as a Buddha, right? A being that is like a little bit closer to us in ordinariness can talk about and understand emptiness. That could also be a skillful means. So that could be another possible reason.
Oh, this one?
Yeah. And so following on Paivi's question, right, there's a natural second question that will flow from what she said, which is, okay, now we understand Avalokiteshvara, but why is Shariputra involved, right? Like, why did he have to start this ball rolling?
대용 주세 가르에서 까 디디를 니마 이에서 시알롬 시바
Yeah.
시바 때 샤리번 노지께 뭐래 돼요.
아, 네.
보다
미이체케야다 뭐지 쿠샤쿠야.
다 보고 시알롬 시알로야다.
Loslo. This is connected to Shariputra's pre-element quality, which was the most refined behavior. He had the most refined behavior and conduct of all of the Buddha's disciples.
하고서 어다 대에서 대니가 파지 대지와이나 다뭐 들어가서 말해 뭐 관계 할래야 뭐니 좋았어.
Yeah, so people think, wow, Avalokiteshvara, right? And also Shariputra with this really inspiring conduct and behavior, you know, they're demonstrating faith and interest in these teachings, and that inspires them, right?
다 조조는 망고비 디자를 디세 림보를 펴도 제가 아이다 손지게 대지니 다시 일로 비야 조 대.
So the Buddha, right, the Buddha mind can see things that ours cannot. So he would have seen that for the teachings of the sutra to endure for a long time and to encourage the most possible sentient beings to practice them, it's more beneficial if Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara are involved as interlocutors. So that's the reason, Paivi.
Can I ask one? Why isn't then the Manjushri, is Avalokiteshvara more appealing?
Right, yeah,
or
because
something more close than for like a Manjushri.
Because you're thinking like Manjushri is more like wisdom, right?
Yes.
And this is the Heart of Wisdom
He
Sutra.
has the aspect of wisdom.
Totally, yeah. Then di kelen sarso yine karichene chenrezi re. Jampe yang ina yagadis karin sana di sherab ning porwa ane sangi chasanga sherag nampa di jampe yang re dua. Then karichene jampe yang maresa.
맞자 대 데모레 되는 찌치나 나치나 시리즈에 다 디디가로 오코로버게 뭐뭐 놀러 깨라 치아치 메로스 다 디지세시 뭐 말다서.
So Geshe doesn't know like a precise reason explained in the scriptures, but he does know that, especially like maybe in the earlier times, Avalokiteshvara was the more well-known and the more kind of popular Bodhisattva. So it may simply have been that because of that, Avalokiteshvara was able to connect with more beings. But he's not sure. This is Geshe-la's guess. It's Geshe-la's guess as to why. Yeah. Yeah. So because he was so well known, so widely worshipped and appreciated, this may be the reason why he's involved in the sutra in this way.
I have one more question, but that can wait for until we get there, those stanzas. So I will wait.
Oh, okay.
If we are going on this text until we reach there, then I'll ask it. Okay.
I think so. Like Geshe is taking his time to go through things really precisely. So there's definitely going to be more time for questions. Yeah,
okay.
For sure.
Yeah, but I let others ask now. Okay, thank you.
Sure. You're welcome. You're welcome. Dave, I see your hand. Go ahead. I think he's muted.
There we go. Yes, thank you. Yeah, so we have one from socials, and then I think Sue has a question as well.
Sure.
So Aktio Ergosam on YouTube is asking, what is the difference between shamatha and vipassana?
Aktio Ergosam, yes, from Mongolia. I've seen Aktio before. So welcome from Mongolia. So he's asking, or she's asking about the difference between shamatha and vipassana.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Nganso di shine dang laktong kiepar kandes resa.
Shine dang laktong da kungine te dulila marwas. Aina holt lila wach kode wach lava ina shine sene mi pachingola.
So Geshe said that actually this is very profound and requires an extensive explanation, but he'll give you a simple answer in a capsule. So this is like the simple answer that we can speak about shamatha as being able to keep the mind abiding single-pointedly on one object of focus, one object.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the Tibetan word for shamatha is shine, and she, Geshe, is explaining as pacifying. So from pacifying the mind moving in many different directions to different objects, we are able to ne. So shi is pacify, ne is abide. We are able to ne. We are able to abide single-pointedly on one object. So that's the etymology of the Tibetan word shine, which is shamatha, the Tibetan for shamatha. Vipassana is given in Tibetan as lak tong. Lak means more or increase. Tong means to see. So it literally means to see more. Lak tong yang So according to the presentation in Sutra, we have to achieve that shini, that calm abiding first by resting on one object. And then vipassana, laktong, follows from that. So by cultivating the stability of shine or shamatha, we have an increased power which will naturally unfold into vipassana. Yeah. Karichene. Chikla dene. So from that single-pointed focus of shamatha on various objects, the capacity of the mind is refined and sharpened. And then the mind is able to appreciate the qualities of impermanence, lack of inherent existence, and so forth of objects in a more refined way, which is vipassana. It's laktong. One sees more than one saw before. So if you were to take that little plant as the example, with shine, with shamatha, we're focusing on that plant single-pointedly. We're just trying to hold it single-pointedly in the mind. Once we're able to abide on it single-pointedly, then we can have a refined way to appreciate its momentariness, its impermanence, changing from moment to moment, its lack of inherent existence, its emptiness. That's the expression of laktong or vipassana. Our power to differentiate, to scrutinize the object is greatly enhanced by our previous training in shamatha, in single-pointed concentration. Then we can say, these are the leaves, these are the stems, these are the flowers, these are changing from moment to moment. These do not exist in a stable way. So a difference between sutra and tantra is that in sutra, we have to train in shamatha, in single-pointed concentration, before we can really practice vipassana deeply. However, in tantra, shamatha and vipassana can be cultivated simultaneously. So Geshe said, sorry, maybe a bit of too long an answer, but he hopes we got there.
Okay, go ahead, Sue.
This one.
Yeah, Suzette. Go ahead, Suzette. Yeah.
It's my question goes back to the first question about Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara and all the Tathagata and all the great beings that were present at that time. Was it just Avalokiteshvara? I feel that it was all the beings were absorbed in concentration, but Shariputra maybe wasn't there at that level. So he was asking Avalokiteshvara to, and that's why all the Tathagatas rejoice, because it was brought out.
So what you're thinking, Suzette, is that like all of the beings are in this meditative equipoise, but Shariputra, his cultivation wasn't advanced enough to be in that meditative equipoise, and maybe that's part of the reason why he's the one that like asked the question to get the ball rolling.
And the Tathagata, knowing through great clairvoyance, knew that Shariputra was going to ask that question, which would keep the Prajñāpāramitāhṛdaya Sutra alive in the, far distant future.
Okay, yeah, okay, I've got you. So, tambo di nganso Shariputra karechene triwa tangwa res. Kochena Shariputra dang chinrezi dang tomba chomdende konso sum le pet manga yeres. Roa, sungshu nampe kapola roa kebu dampa mambo yeres. Kebu dampa denso chichena chatsangwa samo tompa nigi kandesla gore tinge zinla nyamsha degi yeres. Ine Sharipu ko tinge zin di yomares. Ko tse di lemason. Chesang ko konso nangshin nyamshak de tugyomares. Nyamshak de mitubne dene de la tene ko triwatangores. Di gimsen chikrebes. Ane nipa di tama tomba chomdende Tathagata tomba chomdende di roa legso dabo chik lagi res roa Shariputra chua di tangne dene do di pusun sopa chik labne dene shejingi do Tutsu rinpo de tugi yotsang ko legso jesu irangwa yores. Nesu ni denso redua.
Nesa umar jinda wores. Ina ko tunmani la nyomba jama toba sa atende kumare. Ko da chumar was. Tumani ngesa to tutsawares.
So Geshe likes your line of reasoning, and he thinks the second part about the rejoicing is completely correct. The first part he can't necessarily agree with because Shariputra was a foe destroyer. And so to be a foe destroyer, you definitely have to have a direct realization of emptiness, which should mean that he was able to enter that equipoise. He was able to enter that level of meditation.
On
the countless varieties of phenomena, like in the same way that a Buddha and a highly elevated Bodhisattva would be able to contemplate, maybe he wouldn't be able to do that, but he would definitely be able to rest in meditative equipoise upon emptiness because he was a foe destroyer.
Yeah.
So that means he had, just to be clear, being a foe destroyer means that you've had a direct realization of emptiness, right? So Shariputra is actually pretty far along. But the rest of your reasoning he agrees with.
Okay. It's just a thought. Thank you, Geshe.
No problem. You're welcome. So Geshe said if there's no questions, he'll tell a story for a couple minutes. Are you guys cool with that? Okay, so we'll end with a short story. Los. Yeah. Ale, yeah. So this is a story of the Buddha, and at this time the Buddha had already kind of gone out from the palace and was meditating and things like this, but his wife Yasodhara, right, we know that she was left in the palace, right? So she was still there. It was after the Buddha left that her pregnancy began to show. And because of the timing of her pregnancy, a lot of people in the kingdom were saying mean things about her, like that the Buddha was not really the father of the child and so forth. So she was getting all of these accusations, and it caused her great distress. And so we know that after the Buddha's realization, right, he came back to the palace to meet his father, and there was a conversation that unfolded between the father and the son. At that time, right, because of these problems, Yasodhara brought her son to where the Buddha and his father were speaking. You know, by that time the son was a little bit grown.
아마들 강에 뭐야 해서 다른 게 가서 긴장한 주치는 뭐야 아니 뿌기들 시도 주제네라 다 저러 깨치는 맛이 아니 아마 되잖아
Yeah.
다 저러 빠와서 이런 시도 되셔스
Ale.
예뻐대
Loso.
그걸 뿌기 주지 있어라
Yeah. So the child was still, you know, quite small. And so Yasodhara told him, you know, don't say anything. You know, just go to where the people are assembled, watching this conversation between the Buddha and his father. And then whoever feels right that person is your father, give them this piece of fruit. She gave him a piece of fruit and said, give this piece of fruit to the one who you feel is your father. Yeah, and so of course, he walked with this piece of fruit and he put it in the hand of the Buddha. Inedi pukudi ko pala yampa kande sakosonti.
세시오스 단에 뿌기 주시래 되니 이나요 아마티가 강에 전부 책이 와 있어
Yeah.
다 저러 봐서 이나 시도도 되셔
Ine ko midire slamaso. So you know, she did this to try to help to dispel those rumors. She didn't point out to her son where the Buddha was, but she just said, give this apple to the one who you think is your father. And this sort of was the beginning of her clearing her name. Yeah. In the dream test show major. I don't know.
Do you think you want to
but it didn't seem to be So this was the koputema tambu tuyarebe. So this was the first time that he met his father, and it was through just that feeling of knowing who his father was that he gave the piece of fruit. So Geshe said that he'll tell more about this story a little bit later, next time. So any more questions? If not, we will end here. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care, everyone. Tashi dele. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Geshe.
Yeah.
Tuchiche.